Hey, Mark Clark here from Village Church in Vancouver. We're in Matthew chapter 5 still, and Jesus in verse 17 says, "Do not think that I've come to abolish the law of the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Here's a huge principle for your life that we all need to learn. The Bible, every part of it, is really about Jesus. This is where Jesus is saying, hey, I know I've been quoting the prophets in the Old Testament, and I'm going to continue to, and you've got to understand that the whole Bible is about me. Now, oftentimes, we're not taught that. We read the David and Goliath story, for instance, and we're told that if we can just be good enough, if we can be moral enough, if we can be powerful enough, then we can slay the giants of our life. And that's how it gets preached to us and taught to us as kids. The problem with that is that's a moralistic reading of the Bible, and it crushes us under the weight and the burden and the shame and the guilt of the fact that we never be David. I mean, the story itself says David wasn't even David. It was God who won that battle for David and handed it to him. And so the different way of reading that story is that you're not David in that story. You're actually the Israelites hiding up behind the rocks where a representative, Jesus, goes out and wins a battle for you, and then that battle gets imputed to you. That's how to read the Bible. Every story about the Bible is actually about the person and the work of Jesus. And I get to do this with my kids each night when I put them to bed and I read them these stories. And I get to talk about, why is the Noah story really about Jesus? And there's one writer who talks about the idea that, God hung a bow up in the sky, a rainbow, but actually in the Hebrew, it's a war bow. And the whole point of that story is now God is done judging the world by drowning everyone, and he hangs a bow up pointed at himself into the heart of heaven, because one day he's going to come down and actually take the wrath of God on himself. Every single story is pointing toward the person and the work of Jesus Christ. And the reason that's important is because if you don't read the Bible like that, the Bible will hit you over the head and it will become a weight and a burden about who you are not. See, you're not perfect. That's why Jesus had to come and be perfect for you. You can't do all the things that you look at the people in the Bible and you're like, I want to do all of those things. You won't be able to do those things. That's why Jesus had to come and do them for you. Then through his death and resurrection and the power of the Spirit, you and I become the kinds of people that God calls us to in the world to do amazing things. But the power doesn't come from you. It comes through you. And that's why Jesus is constantly telling people, realize the entire scriptures are actually about me. And if you read them otherwise, they'll crush you. And I did young adult ministry for a lot of years. And I watched a lot of young adults walk away from the church because they thought the Bible was just a moralistic book that told them to do this and not do this. And it crushed them under the weight because they knew that wasn't them. Here's the reality of the gospel. It gets inside your heart and changes not what you do, but what you want to do. And that's the thing that's going to glorify God.